Okay, welcome everyone, and I believe that we're. Oh, Shelley, you're still here now. I thought you were already in Panama. No, you're going tomorrow. Yeah. We are sponsored by Baruchi and Lili Nishmas Yaakov Chaim Ben Abba Estabas Gittel Avram Ben Shmuel HaKohen by Shom Fogli Nishmas Yaakov Zeb Ben Yuda Aryeh Rivka Bas Yaakov Yosef Sivya Miriam Bas Gad Yosef Ben Siam Ben Yaakov Zev by A.B. Spry for Nachas for children, from grandchildren, by Yaakov Yemansky Hakar Satayf to the Rav and the Zoom family, Nachas from children and grandchildren, Ed Salah from London, and Joshua Rosenberg, a virtual Talmud. We have the pleasure of welcoming in Chaim Kramer, Irving Fishbaum, Baruch and Shalom Fogel, and Yisrael Fisher, Aaron Swade, Saba, Mo Kushner, Yisrael Meir Kaplan, Dr. Guy, and in Shul I see Michal Avram, Rich Lenner, Ruvain Shannon, Dr. Block, Menachem Umansky, Stephen Holtzman, Michal Akhtar, Mel Zachter, Yitzi Fuchs, Shelley Zeitlin, Ruvain Pollack, Nachman Chapler, Marshall Castle, Barish Gesserman, Moshe Lehman, Avram Rezepkowitz, Ilya Shutman, Yitzi Muller, Rabbi Kranz, David Helfgott on Kololoshin. As we are ahead, starting on Nun Hey Amud Aleph, and we're holding by Shalach Rav Huna bar Avin. That's 5 lines from the top of Daf Nun Hey Amud Aleph. Shalach Rav Huna bar Avin. Yisrael Shalach Sada Me'avid Kechavim. This is the case where Shelley buys a field from Tony, and the incredible sticky-fingered Marshall Castle comes and snatches it right under Shelley's nose. And Oboy Yisrael Achar, Marshall comes, v'hichzik ba, and makes a chazaka, we cannot pry it out of Marshall's paws, even though Shelley already paid Tony for it. Now, the reason is, because as we said, as soon as Shelley gave the money to Tony, it's out of Tony's rishus. However, Shelley doesn't get it from the guy until Tony gives him a shtar. So until then, it's in no man's land, like a midbar, the Gemara says, so that if Marshall could come and make a chazaka, he gets it. Finders keepers, losers weepers. Now, we asked, but what about Dina de Malchusa Dina? Right? That was the question that we asked. What about the law of the land? And the law of the land is that you don't get the land until you get the deed of sale. And Marshall didn't get a deed of sale from Tony, so why does he get it? So the Gemara says it's talking about a land that Tony didn't pay the taxes on. He didn't pay the property taxes. And the law is that the one that comes along and pays the property taxes gets it. And Shelley, while he gave money to Tony, he didn't pay the property taxes. But Marshall, being the, sticky and I can't come up with the right word, but it's a mix between a pirate and a Cossack. The Marshall went ahead and paid the property taxes. And the Gemara says, they all are in agreement with this. I'm a rabbi. Hani tlas mile ishtoili ukfen bar Nehemiah. These 3 laws were related to me by Ukfen bar Nehemiah, Reish Galusa, Mishmei de Shmuel, in the name of the great Shmuel. One is Dina de Malchusa Dina, that the law of the land is law, and now we're going to have 2 manifestations of the law of the land is law. That is, Varisusa de Parsai, we're going to learn like one shot in the Rashbam, Arisusa de Parsai, a chazaka according to Persian law, is not established ad memshnin until 40 years. In other words, they expect in Persia that the buyer should keep his paper for 40 years. So until 40 years, mere uncontested occupancy does not prove that it's yours. That's one of the laws of Persia. And second law of Persia, Vahani Zarure. Now that's a very interesting term. Zarure are people that inherited a lot of dough from their parents. And the Rashbam says they're called, the word ziyar means a shine. So the Rashbam says they're called zarure al shem nachala shekari zihara. The inheritance is called zihara. And these are hani zarure, these rich heirs, the Zovin Ara Lataska, that purchase land by paying the property taxes. These are like lands that are under foreclosure, and if somebody goes ahead and pays the property tax, they could take it over. So if they purchase it by paying the property tax, zavinu zvine, the purchase is a good purchase, but that's only if they were delinquent on the property tax. Taska, the property tax, avalakarga, but if they were delinquent on the skull tax, that's a tax that's taxed not on the property but per head, loy. Why? My time a karga of the gavre monach. The skull tax rests on the person. The person could be arrested, but the government cannot take their property. They cannot garnish their property. However, Rav Huna bar Yeshua argues, Rav Huna bar Yeshua aimer afilu sarei dekada, even barley that they have in the cookie jar, mishtabdei lekarga, can be seized by the government for the skull tax, and of course their land could be seized for it. So therefore, if a person pays the delinquent skull tax, he could take that amount of value of land. Amar Rav Ashi, Amali Huna bar Nasan, it was related to me by Huna bar Nasan, Koshi ba Amemer. Amemer says that if for the payment of skull tax, your property is really in the hands of the crown, im kain betalta Yerushas b'nai abachar. If so, there wouldn't be an inheritance of a firstborn. The din is that a firstborn inherits only that which is in the estate, not that which is owed to the estate. It only inherits that which is mulzik and that which is roy. Now, if it's true that if the skull tax is not paid, the crown owns it, and it's only going to become the estate's if the property tax is paid, then how could a firstborn ever take a double portion? The estate will always be only potentially theirs if the property tax is paid. And he doesn't take a double portion with that which is only a potential, like that which is already there. Now, of course, the obvious answer is, which comes to mind, I don't even know what the Gemara's Havamina was, the obvious answer is it's talking about where the skull tax was paid. And that's where he's going to get a double portion. And that's basically what the Gemara answers. Amalei, he says, then this wouldn't only be a question on the skull tax. It would be a question if the property tax is not paid, then it would also be only roy, because it belongs to the crown until it's paid. It's where does the firstborn get a double portion? The Yov Tasko Mace, where the father was up to date in his property taxes, that he only died after he paid the property tax. Hakanami, you know where the firstborn gets a double portion? The Yov Cargo Mace, where he was up to date on the skull tax payment. Hakanami, if the property tax wasn't paid, the firstborn would not get a double portion. Amar Rav Ashi, and we want to welcome in everybody joining us. Gedalia Engel has joined us. We're holding by Amar Rav Ashi, 6 lines from the bottom of Daf Nun Hey Amud Aleph. As it's amazing how one night I'm broadcasting from Lakewood, and now I'm back in South Fallsburg. I didn't pull in much earlier. I pulled in over here. I davened Mincha Marv in Woodridge, and now we're here. Baruch Hashem. Also, I want to give a report. Baruch Hashem, I had a long conversation with our first president. We have 2 presidents. So with our first president, Baruch Gold, who had knee surgery this morning and is already walking. Really, really amazing. We're going to learn Refuah Shalema for Baruch Eliyahu ben Chana. He should have a Refuah Shalema completely B'Sach Shachar Yisrael. I also had a conversation with our Chaver of our shul, Dov Salkowitz, who had spinal surgery, and Baruch Hashem, he is recovering nicely. Dov Ben Pearl. It's not Dov Ber. I said Dov Ber. It's Dov Ben Pearl. He should have Refuah Shalema B'Sach Shachar Yisrael. My mother is slowly recovering, as we learned for Esther Fradel Bas Chana, and we wish my mother and Saba a Mazel Tov on his 7th grandchild becoming a chazan. 7th grandchild from Mendy becoming a chazan.
Thank you.
Now, everybody says, how could it be that such a young man has 7 grandchildren chasanim? Saba started young. That's all.
He's got 7 more.
Kedai Nahara has a baseball team with a full bench.
They're missing 1 more boy, Shifta Yisrael.
Yeah. Now, says the Gemara, Amar Rav Ashi, Amar li Huna bar Nasan. Rav Ashi said it was related to me by Huna bar Nasan. She'altinu l'safrei de Rava. I asked the judicial clerks of Rava, v'amru li, and they told me hilchasa k'Rav Huna b'rei Reb Yeshua, that the law is like Rav Huna b'rei Reb Yeshua, that if people didn't pay the skull tax, you could requisition from them by paying the skull tax their property. However, says the Gemara, v'lohi, that is not the opinion of Rava, and that is not the halacha. Just the judicial clerks illegally gave to these wealthy people documents of possession, and therefore they wanted to protect what they did. So hasam ukmei milsehu damar. They only said it to uphold what they did, but they didn't do correctly. I just want to point out over here, because Marshall is thirsty, that we have 30 Zoomers here, and since we'll give him the extra 2 people that are in the Aguda, so he already has 32. So
3 people in the Aguda now.
Yeah, but I count 1 as the square, so it's 2 extra besides the 1, so he has 32. So if he wouldn't be sluggy incarnate, he would have had already a case of bourbon. But I know.
You get 70, I'll send you back to my vaccine.
Now,
Thank you, Saba.
Says the Gemara, V'amar Rav Ashi, this is interesting, speaking about Marshall. Pardachta, a lazy good-for-nothing, somebody that walks around with a shirt that says "Do not disturb." Look at that! He's wearing a shirt that says "Do not disturb." Unbelievable! How did I figure that out? In other words,
Please do not disturb.
yeah. Another.
Why he says do not disturb? Because he's disturbed.
A vagabond, a homeless good for nothing.
Oh, no.
Says the Gemara, Pardachta. Messiah Masa. If the government doesn't put on him a tax, and therefore everybody else's tax is a little higher, because Marshall is not doing his fair weight. So Messiah Masa, he has to kick in money to the town to offset that he's not being charged. Bahani mili doubt silte masa. That's only if the townspeople told the government, don't count him. He's not working, he has no money. So if the town got him off the hook, so then he has to chip in. Avalan diske, if he's just off the radar, the town doesn't know he exists. He's nowhere to be found. He doesn't have an address. He doesn't have a P.O. box. He just off the grid. Then that's siyata d'shmai. Then he's excused because heaven decides that he shouldn't have to pay taxes. So then he doesn't have to kick in anything into the communal tax. Now here's an interesting thing. Again, we're talking about acres that belong to a ger that died, and our Marshall is always dreaming. He has these dreams that a ger will die without relatives, and he's going to step in and just make a kinyan on acres of land. So what happens over here is a ger died, and Marshall made a kinyan on a piece of land. Now next to it was another piece of land, and it was divided by an elevated border or by the chatzav shrub. The chatzav shrub was many times used to demarcate property because its roots go straight down. That's what Yeshua used to mark the boundaries in Eretz Yisrael, because the chatzav shrub, its roots go straight down. So even if they pull out the shrub, you could tell the boundary from its roots. So ameitzer v'chatzav mafsikin b'nichse hager. They act as a hefsek, as a blockade, so that if Marshall makes a chazaka on the land, he only gets up to the border, to the shrub, and not afterwards. But for Peya, that if there's two pieces of land on either side of the chatzav, you don't have to take a corner for each one. It doesn't make it into two fields. And we'll see, for Tumah, it doesn't make it into two fields either. And we'll talk about what's the case of Tumah. Ki asa Ravin Amar Reb Yechanan, when Ravin arrived, he said in the name of Reb Yechanan, Afilu lepeya v'Tumah. The elevated border and the shrub acts as a interposition, as a blockade even for Peah and Tumah. So now let's talk about what do we mean Peah and Tumah. So Peah Mahi. What's the case of Peah? Excuse me. Peah Mahi. The Tanan. The Elu Mafsikin LePeah. Right? We know that Peah means that you have to give a corner of your field, a little corner of your field, to the Aniyim. So the following act as an interposition that if they divide a field, it has a din of 2 fields, and you have to give 2 corners. Hanachel, if there's a river or a ravine. Vashlulis, an irrigation canal. V'derech harabim, a public path. V'derech hayochid, a public road or a private road. A public road is 16 amas. A private road is 4 amas. And of course, the question is, if it says a private road, then surely a public road will separate. And it says that it's loizu avzu. V'shvil harabim, a public path, which is a footpath used by the public. V'shvil hayochid, or a private path, which is in use even in the rain season, where most places you don't walk because the crops are growing. The kavua bein b'yamaysa chama bein b'yamaysa geshama. So that's more of a permanent path. So the question is, does a meitzer, an elevated border, or the shrub separate for Peah? So that was machlokes. Now Tumah Mahi, we said Tumah. What do we mean by Tumah? So this is an interesting case. Ditnan hanichnes l'bika b'yamaysa gesham. If let's say, let's pick somebody. Marshall. Now, the question is Marshall going to become Tomei? Or more Tomei than he already is? Tomei, Tomeier, and Tomeiest. Now, what happens is, what happens is that it's talking about where he entered a valley. A valley is a conglomeration of fields. Now he entered this valley b'yamaysa gesham in the rain season. Now since it's in the rain season, people don't walk there because they don't want to damage the crops. And since people don't walk there, it has a din of a reshus hayachid. And we all know that we learned from Saita that Safek Tumah b'reshus hayachid is Tameh. However, hanichnas l'bika b'yamaysa geshamim v'tumah b'sada plains. In one of the fields, there was a corpse. V'omar, and Marshall says, I cannot tell a lie. Halachti l'mokam alos, I went into that valley, but ve'eni yodea im nichnasti lo'isa mokam v'imlav. I don't know if I went into the field that had the corpse. Rabbi Lazar Mitar. Why? Because Rabbi Lazar holds that it's a svek sveika. First of all, it's a suffix if he went into the field that had the corpse. And even if he went into the field that had the corpse, it's a suffix if he walked over the corpse. Now, even though we say suffix tumah b'reshus hayachid is tameh, but a svek sveika is tar. The Chachamim say it's only one suffix. The suffix is, did he walk over the corpse or not? And since it's a reshus hayachid, he's tameh. Shei Rebbe Eliezer, Rebbe Eliezer makes a split. Shei Rebbe Eliezer, I'm a suffix be a tar. If it's suffix, if he went into that field or not, so that's a svek sveika, so he's tar. Suffix maga tumah. If it's suffix, if we know he was in the field. It's just a question if he walked over the corpse, then that's a suffix tumah reshus hayachid. That is tameh. Now, therefore, what they're saying is that the shrub and the elevated border is a hefsek even for tumah, meaning that if there was one big field, but it had a shrubs dividing it, or an elevated border dividing it, which makes it two fields, according to Rabbi Eliezer, since we don't know if he went into the field that had the tumah, because now there's two fields there, so it's a svek and he would be tar. Avol Shabbos loy. But for Shabbos, the shrub and the elevated border is not considered a hefsek. While Rava says, afilu linyan Shabbos, even for Shabbos. Now what's the case of Shabbos? Oh, now you got Dr. Black curious. What's the case of Shabbos? Very interesting. Tanya hoitzi chatzi groigris l'shus harabim. If, let's say, Shalom takes out a half a dried fig to Rosh Hashanah. Now, the minimum to be chayiv, an issa d'oraisa, let's say he did it b'shoigeg gechatis, is a groigris. Groigris is the shear for food, a dried fig. Now, he carries out from his bungalow into the Rosh Hashanah a half a fig. V'anichi, put it down. And then he took out another half a dried fig. So do they combine? That he should be doing an iser, that he should be chayiv achatas. So says if he did it behelam echad, if he did it in one state of unawareness, that means he didn't realize it was Shabbos in between, chayiv. B'shnei alamois, but if he did it in two states of awareness, he remembered it was Shabbos in between, so Yediyah mechalkais, then pot. But Rabbi Yossi splits hairs even more. Rabbi Yossi Aimer, is there any water in there? Maybe there is. No? A lot of ice because it's warm. Please. Rabbi Yossi Aimer, behelam echad, in one state of an awareness, b'rishus achas, if he takes it into one rishus harabim, he's chayiv. But b'shtei rishuyas, into two rishus harabim, are you going out to the store? Are you going outside? Are you going to a store? No. If he goes b'shtei rishuyas, if he puts it in two separate rishus harabims, potter. Now, what makes it two separate rishus harabims? I mean, it doesn't mean on one block of 13th Avenue and another block of 13th Avenue. That's one rishus harabim. What makes it that it's two different rishuyas? So the Amar Rabbah, v'hu sheyesh chiyav chatas beineihem. There has to be a chiyav chatas between them. That means that in between the two rishus harabims there's a rishus hayachid, because carrying from the rishus harabim to rishus hayachid is an issa chatas. So if he puts it in one rishus harabim, and then the other half of fig he puts in another rishus harabim with a rishus hayachid in between, they don't combine. Aval karmel is like, but if there's only a rishus d'Rabbanan, like a karmelis that is an area that's not a public thoroughfare, but it's also not a rishus hayachid, right? It's not hukaf ladira. It's not surrounded by walls for living purposes, so it's not a rishus hayachid. But it's not a public thoroughfare. It's not a rishus harabim. So if there's only a karmelis in between, like let's say a parking lot, that wouldn't separate them. Abaye Amar afilu caramelist, even a caramelist would separate them. Aval pisla loy, but not a log. Rava Amar afilu pisla, even a log. And therefore, just like a log would separate the two Rishus Arabims, so that if Shalom took out a half a Gregoris into one and a half a Gregoris into the other, it would be mechalik and he wouldn't be a chayiv achatis, they wouldn't be mitzdarif. The same thing is true if he took into one a half a Gregoris and then separating the other Rishus Arabim was a meitzar, an elevated border, or a chatzav, or a shrub, it would separate it so that if he takes the half a Gregoris into the other side, they wouldn't combine to make him chayiv achatis. V'az the Rava l'tamei, Rava goes according to his reasoning. The Amar Rava Rishus Shabbos k'Rishus Gittin Dami. The laws of Shabbos are like the laws of Gittin. Now, this is very interesting. A man gifts his courtyard to his wife in order that she could acquire her get. Such a nice fellow, lo yaleinu. And then he throws the get into the courtyard, and it lands on top of a log. The din is she's not divorced, because he gave her the courtyard, he didn't give her the log. The log is considered a different rishus. So here also, as we welcome in A.B. Spry, here also the din is that this log has a din like a rishus enough to separate the two rishus arabims, that if Shalom brings a half a Gregoris into one from the rishus yachid, and then a half a Gregoris onto the other side in a rishus arabim, the rishiyos are mechalkos, and they don't combine, and they don't make him chayiv achatis, and just like a log separates, the elevated border and the shrub also separates. Okay, as we now go on to learn the Mishnah Yomis, again we want to remind you that tomorrow night again start time is at 8:30.